Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 820 AD Carry tier list. So as always, you can find timestamps in the description. You can also find a link to this Google Doc in the description. In the Google Doc, you'll see a little mini Google Doc for each one of the top 15 entries. And then that'll have a link to the Wikia for the champion, which will tell you all the abilities and stats about the champ. It'll have a 5-point rating system that I'll explain in just a second. It'll also have recommended runes and recommended items. Just keep in mind that these runes and items can change a little bit depending on the matchup and the game state. But overall, AD Carry is one of the most sort of predictable and static as far as building goes. You're going to build the same stuff on the same champs a lot, and you're going to take the same runes a lot. But there are a couple of exceptions out there that we'll talk about. As far as the rating system goes, it's just a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being that the champion is one of the weakest champions in the role at whatever that task is, and 5 being the champion is one of the strongest at that task for that role. So lane pressure is just how likely is the champion going to be able to get lane priority and sort of bully people around in the lane. Kill threat is how likely is the champion going to be able to get a kill during the laning phase. Safety is how safe is the champion from ganks, and how easy is it to position with the champion later on in the game to be efficient. Scaling is how well does the champion do over time, and reliability is two parts. One part is the mechanics, so how easy is the champion to play both mechanically and from a decision point of view, so on your end just to optimize the champion. And then the other part is how well does the champion fit into the meta. Do they play well with other champions that might be on your team that are effective? Do they play very well against popular champions on the enemy team? So it's a two-part factor there for reliability. Okay, and as usual, this is primarily intended for a Plat Minus audience, so you might see some of this stuff in Challenger level gameplay, but it's a very different meta just because of the positioning requirements, the kinds of champions that are popular in that super high level meta, and then also the gold income. So some champions just perform a lot better on their 1 or 2 item power spike rather than their 5 or 6 item power spike. So if you're playing in silver, it's much more likely in games that you're going to get to 5 items versus if you're playing in Challenger or a pro scene where you might only get 1 or 2 items in a game, just because less people are going to die in those games. So that does change around the meta a little bit. I take reliability into account, so how likely is it someone can optimize the play here. We talked about that with the 5-point scale, but that also means that I'm going to prioritize champions that... I do have some that are really difficult to play, but it's not intended for one-tricks. Basically, if you one-trick some of these champions, you'll do a lot better on them than other champions. So I'm just looking at sort of your average person, how do they fit in, with a reasonable amount of games on the champion, but certainly not a one-trick. Okay, and don't forget, if you like this video, be sure to like the video, right? Drop that like, especially if you're a subscriber, especially if you watch a lot of my content. Be sure to like it. That way other people will come by, check it out. And if you've watched several videos on the channel and you enjoy it, don't forget to subscribe as well. It really does help out with visibility on YouTube. If you'd like to support the channel, I've got a link in the description where you can donate. If you want to become a member, which is just $5 a month, just like a Twitch subscription through PayPal, then you can play with us on Viewers Night every Sunday. It's been a lot of fun. You can check out past streams, see if it looks like something you'd like to take part in. You can join our members-only Discord, and you get a $5 discount on any coaching or guides that you may want for the channel. So pretty good deal for supporting a channel that does something that a lot of other channels don't do. Actually engage critically, think critically, teach you how to think critically about League of Legends to become a better player and just appreciate the game more. So if you're interested in supporting that kind of thing, be sure to check out the description. Okay, and then my wife just brought home my daughter there, and she seems like she's not too happy about it, so I'm going to close the door really quick. We'll get her some chalky milk or something. She'll be all good here in a minute. Well, let's go ahead and get into the tier list here. Okay, so some stuff has shifted, some stuff has not very much. So the big things that are going on with this patch that could impact the meta, of course, Ezreal is a marquee person here. Now, the thing to keep in mind about Ezreal, at least from what I've seen, is that his damage to champions is not going to change that much, at least from what I'm reading. Okay, so let's just look at his numbers here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if we go in here... Did I have Ezreal on here? Let me go to the very bottom. There we go. Comprehensive page. Now, I'm recording this on Mondays. This is before the official patch notes come out because I travel Monday to Thursday, but I want to get you guys and gals the content as soon as I can because I know everybody wants to know, what's going on, what should they be playing. So I'm recording this using the PBE data here. But as far as I can see, you know, the Mystic Shot is exactly the same. Arcane, exactly the same. Ult, exactly the same, right? So that's the same stuff. The only thing they're really changing is the W. So how this is going to work is, well, yeah, I'll talk about I'll explain it just really quickly what's going on here, and then we'll talk about them as we get down to the tier list, because I don't want to go out of order for people that are watching it on the Google Doc there. But this is just kind of like a recap of what's going on in the patch notes. This is the basically the same damage as he has right now. If we pull this up, it's the same damage to champs. Okay. So if we look at this right now, Essence Flux, you know, for upwards of 90 mana, does 250 damage with an 80 AP ratio. Okay. If we look at this, it does cost less mana, which is really nice. The 50 mana. That has a 12-second cooldown. This has a 9-second cooldown. So the mana is a little bit less, but does 255 damage with a 0.16 AD ratio and a 0.7 AP. Now, that is different. Okay, so that is a little different. I was only looking at the AP ratio when I was thinking about this. So they did add in an AD ratio also. So this is a 0.8 AP ratio. But this one apparently also has a 0.6 AD ratio, which is significant. That is very significant. So he is going to be doing more damage to champions than he was before. But it does come at like a slightly higher skill cap. You have to actually hit this before your Q is going to do that extra damage. And you do get some mana back. So this will help with his early game trading. So the AP ratio is down by 0.1, but you get an extra 0.6 bonus AD and AP ratio. So that is useful. Now, the big addition, though, is how much damage this is going to do to towers, because this can stick to towers, and if you auto-attack the tower, it's going to do a lot of extra damage. So it's going to be, you know, Ziggs level damage on towers. So he is going to take towers a lot faster than he has in the past. So that's really helpful. And just remember that as he hits abilities with his Q, he's going to get a lot of CDR. Typically, he gets, you know, 40-45% CDR depending on his build. So that's going to take this down to 6 seconds. And then every time he hits something with a Q, it's going to go down an additional 1.5 seconds. Right? And so this is, you know, if he's auto-attacking a tower and just continually, you know, queuing minions, this is going to be up like every 3 seconds easily. And so he can drop this on towers over and over and over again. So he is going to shred through towers really quickly if he's left alone. Or even during sieges. Now, I don't think he can use his Q to proc it on towers. You can proc the Q on champions, but the Q just won't hit towers. So you do have to walk up and auto-attack the tower. But that's going to be a lot of extra damage. Now, the trade-off for this is you don't get the bonus attack speed on your allies, which, frankly, is kind of awkward to hit most of the time. Like, it's useful against Baron, or if a bunch of people are just grouped up, you know, trying to take down a tower really quickly. Like, if you just 4-man dive bottom, and he does that, then, you know, you can take a tower a little more quickly. But I feel like this is going to be a lot better in most situations for taking towers. Now, I don't believe this sticks to Dragon or Baron from what I've seen. It's just the towers. But it's going to be quite a bit of extra damage. So that's something to keep in mind. And then they're also nerfing Dark Harvest on this patch, which is going to affect Misfortune. Right? So that's going to hurt her early game a little bit. But everything else should be pretty standardized for most AD carries. So how does this affect the tier list? Let's go ahead and look at it really quickly. So I think Lucian's still going to be at the top. Lucian just has a great combination of mobility, early game pressure, and scaling. And that's something that a lot of other champs don't have right now. As far as win rates go, he's pretty high up on the win rate list. He's one of the highest win rate AD carries, clocking in at about 53%. Now, Misfortune has a little bit more right now, but remember, she's getting nerfed, and then Jhin is kind of creeping around that area too. But he's just very strong. You know, that double shot mechanic is so strong with Blade the Ruined King. Blade is very good right now, especially after they nerfed Stormrazor a little bit. Stormrazor is still a good item on some champs, but it definitely did get nerfed. And he's really strong off that single item power spike. Like, as soon as he hits that, he can go to work because each one of those double shots procs Blade the Ruined King. It also gives him some sustain to work through any kind of light harassment in the laning phase. So if he's getting hit by, you know, Nami or Rakan or Sona or something like that, he can heal through that pretty easily with his Vamp Scepter. And then Black Cleaver actually makes him pretty useful for taking down tanks. as well. So he's not like an ultimate tank killer, but the combination of getting Blade plus Black Cleaver is going to help your team like take down those tanks faster if the enemy happens to run tanks. Now, a lot of times people are not running tanks in this meta. It's a lot of assassins, but he's pretty decent against that as well. He can get Ninja Tabby if he has to, and Cleaver's going to give him a good chunk of extra health that most AD carries don't have, and he's very mobile. You know, he can dash around. He can steal that movement speed with Blade of the Ruined King. While he's running, he can still put up DPS with his ultimate. So he's very slippery. He can dodge a lot of skill shots. He can get out of a lot of situations. And he can put up really big numbers. Now, he is fairly short range, so he can be punished historically by champions like Caitlyn, like Ashe, who have longer auto attack range. But especially at plat and lower, people aren't going to optimize those ranges to punish you for that. And those long range champions like Ashe, like Caitlyn, aren't super popular right now. So, you know, against Draven and against Jhin, it can still be kind of tough early on, but I think he can go toe-to-toe with them. It's just kind of a skill matchup to see what's going on. He's also very good if you happen to have an Ardent Sensor user on your team. So, you know, if you get ahead with, you know, a champion like Sona or Nami, or even Rakan, you know, if you get ahead with Rakan and he wants to get, like, Zeke's Ardent Sensor, if you're like 3-0 in the laning phase and he goes for that double buff on you, you can really take advantage of that big time because each one of those auto attacks is going to trigger the Ardent Sensor extra damage. So I think he is super strong right now. And he synergizes very well with some of these specific runes, particularly Press the Attack, because each one of his little double attacks is going to trigger this. So he's got the Armor Shred, he's got Blade of the Ruined King, he's got the Armor Shred off of Black Cleaver, and he has Press the Attack, which makes your whole team do an extra 12% damage to whoever has the Press the Attack on him. So it's pretty good for dueling, but it's very good for helping to focus down some of these big tank targets too. So I think he's great. Good combination of safety, scaling, single item power spike, good utility for your team, good sort of anti-assassin options. If you go Phantom Dancer as well, that can help you out against assassins later on. If you have Ninja Tabby, Phantom Dancer, Blade, lots of good options there. So he's very versatile, very strong through all stages of the game. I think he's great right now. Now, he's not having a great time in pro play right now. If we look at what was picked during the first week of pros, you know, Lucian here. However, I suspect a big part of that was because Xayah is ridiculously overpowered right now at Worlds, and I think people are picking Lucian into Xayah thinking that's a counter pick. It is not. Spoiler alert, it's not a counter pick. Now, we don't know which teams played this as well. You know, it could have been the good teams always got the Xayah. But yeah, he's 2-9 so far at Worlds. So that's kind of rough. I don't really like the Essence Reaver on him. I like the Phantom Dancer a bit more. Essence Reaver's okay. It does give him more CDR on stuff, but I mean, it's alright. I guess you can't go wrong with it as like a third item, but I think that you definitely want to go Blade of the Ruined King, Cleaver early on. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. So Lucian, very solid. Definitely pick him up if you want to gain some elo. Jhin is another one who is still very strong. They were talking about possibly nerfing Jhin on this patch, but I don't see anything on the PvE. So if it does come through on the main patch notes, I'll leave a link in the description to let you know what I think about it. But right now, they were talking about it. I don't see it here. So, you know, we'll see what happens. They might do it on the next patch. What they're thinking about is nerfing his passive ratio, so how much, like, the rate at which attack speed converts over to AD. And the main reason they're doing this is because the 3-hit attack, I forgot what it's called, but the thing from Domination where it's your first 3 hits are strong. Let me look it up here. I don't know why I'm blanking on the name. Halo Blades, there we go. So the way that Halo Blades is worded, and a lot of people don't understand this, but the way that it's worded is as soon as you auto attack, your auto attack flying through the air has that bonus attack speed. It doesn't count on your initial windup, I don't think, but as you're firing your shot, then you get the bonus attack speed for your next 3 shots. So this doesn't matter a lot of times for most champions because attack speed is not really like, your first 3 shots are not that relevant, especially early on in the laning phase. Like, people would much rather have lethal tempo because it scales much better later on to the game. Champions who would like that type of thing, like if you're running a lethal tempo Vayne or a lethal tempo Kalista or something like that, Xayah, those type of champs. So hardly anyone goes Halo Blade, but Jhin does this specifically because it converts over to AD at a really good rate. So early on in the laning phase, he basically gets 20 extra AD whenever he trades. Even if he just walks up and does one auto attack, he's going to get that 20 extra AD, and that only scales higher as the game goes on. So that's really strong. It's basically like he comes into the lane with a free first blood. Right, and AD scales very, very well on him, not only with his auto attacks, but also with just all of his abilities and his passive. So that's part of what makes Jhin very strong, is he'll go Hail of Blades, Taste of Blood, and then usually something like Eyeball Collection and, you know, either Ravenous Hunter or Relentless Hunter or something like that. I think he usually goes Ravenous. So you'll go Hail of Blades, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter. Gives you quite a bit of sustain in lane, really good burst. And he actually scales pretty well later on in the game. With Stormrazor, he gets moving very, very quickly, right? Because Stormrazor's, everybody knows that interaction by now, but it's going to give you that guaranteed crit, which not only does a ton of damage, but also activates his every hit matters, or whatever. So if you hit him with the third shot as your Stormrazor shot, if you line it up correctly for your engage, you hit him with the third shot, it's going to crit. You get that extra movement speed. Then you hit him with the fourth shot, it's going to crit again, and you get that extra movement speed. So that 1-2 punch there can just do like insane amounts of damage, especially with Halo Blades, especially you know, as the game goes on. If once you get rapid fire and things like that, so you want to go Stormrazor, rapid fire, Infinity Edge, and then you're just kind of going to be completely lighting people up as the game goes on. So yeah, very strong early on, and surprisingly pretty strong later. He's not amazing at taking out tanks, but he's very fast. So it makes him like, it makes it pretty easy to kite out a lot of these bruisers that'll come in. You know, you got a Jax running at you or an Irelia running at you or something like that. He can move around pretty quickly. Olaf, I mean, he's one of the few AD carries that can actually get away from Olaf because he can just outrun him. So he still is going to be quite strong. It's just Hail of Blades, Taste of Blood, either Ghost Poro or Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, and then Absolute Focus, Gathering Storm. Then it goes Boots of Swiftness, get the highest base movement speed you can get. So when you get that bonus, it just kind of really rockets you out there. And then Stormrazor, Rapid Fire Cannon, Infinity Edge. So going to be very strong. Great single item power spike. Once he gets that Stormrazor, he can really delete people. Really good with a lot of these all-in engage burst champions that were really prominent right now as support. So you've got your Rakans, you've got your Alistar, Leona, Thresh, Pyke. All these champs, as soon as they CC somebody, if you hit them with the W, drop a trap under them, and just bust them with your fourth shot, most people are going to have to flash or they're already going to be dead. So really, really strong. And if they do manage to sneak away with a little bit of health, you have your ult to try to gun them down. So I think that Jin's super strong right now. And he'll continue to be so in this patch, especially with kind of the fall of Misfortune a little bit. I think Misfortune will still be good, but the nerf's definitely going to hurt her, and that means that Jin's going to go up just a little bit in terms of relative value, just because he's still going to have his same level of power while Misfortune goes down a bit. Okay, Draven, somebody that I talk about all the time. He's always tier 1, especially if you're good with him. He is one of the hardest AD carries to play in the game, but he comes in a lane with basically a free BF sword off his spinning axes. He's still very good with Stormrazor. He's very good with Bloodthirster or Death's Dance. Those are still all viable options, but I see most people go Stormrazor, Rapid Fire, Infinity Edge. That's not going to give you any lifesteal, but it sure is going to pack a punch. So, you know, super oppressive, especially right now where it's a very early game focused meta. You have lots of hard engage. You know, you've got your Thresh, Pyke, you know, Rakan, Leona, Alistar, all these champions. He loves it. He just wants to get in there and kill people. And I think those are the best kinds of supports right now. And he is a real complement to that. So not only does he have a lot of damage, he can put up big numbers, but also he gets that extra gold off his passive to snowball even harder. So I think that Draven is still going to be top-notch right now. And, you know, with Misfortune falling, he can step up a little bit. He's very good against Xayah in solo queue in the early game because he can just bully her out of lane real hard. He can bully Twitch. He can bully Jinx. A lot of these champions are going to be pretty popular right now. Ezreal is going to be pretty popular. He can just completely destroy Ezreal, you know, in the first 20-25 minutes of the game. So you should definitely be able to run the show with Draven right now. Super strong champion. Going to continue to be strong, but you got to practice him a little bit. You know, he is one of the harder ones because you have to like figure out how to catch his axes while also dodging skill shots, while also paying attention to the minimap, watching out for the jungler, and then, you know, landing your CS. All of this stuff can be pretty tricky with him. But yeah, tons of lane pressure and kill threat, some of the highest in the business. Very unsafe. You know, he only has his Blood Rush to give him a little bit of movement speed. I guess he does have his stand aside. If you're really good with that stand aside, you can stop things like Leona from engaging on you, so that is pretty nice. But overall, not that safe, not that reliable. A lot of people who try Draven goof up as him. Although he is going to have a high win rate because most people who play him consistently for lots of games are going to be one-tricked because he's one of the most one-tricked champions. Because you're rewarded so heavily for doing so, because he's so strong if you get used to him, but he's hard to play. He's still going to go Conquer, which is kind of a weird rune, but it makes sense because he has so much high base damage early on that whenever you trigger Conquer, it might only last for whatever it is, 3 or 4 seconds, but they're going to be dead in 3 or 4 seconds, because really it just takes 1 or 2 axes. Now, he doesn't have any sort of conversion, which is why he doesn't do Hail of Blades. If he could turn that attack speed on AD, he would run Hail of Blades, but that's just a Jhin thing. You know, so he has to run Conquer. It's the same concept, though. You're going to hit him really quickly, really hard, and so you just want that first hit to do as much damage as possible, and Conquer allows you to do that. Okay, yeah, and as I said, some people start Stormrazor first. You can start Bloodthirster. It just depends on what you want to do. Then Rapid Fire. You can also go just skip the Bloodthirster and just go for Infinity Edge if you want to. So with that build, it'd be Stormrazor, Rapid Fire, Infinity Edge. Okay, let's talk about the next one here. Xayah. So I think that Xayah is still really good, but I think she's not quite as good as people think in solo queue. She is very strong, but her win rate is only 50%. Now, part of that is because she's picked the most, and I think she's picked by a lot of people to get auto-filled as AD carry. They're not sure what to play, and they know that she scales the best, and she's easier to play than like Jhin or Lucian or Ezreal or Draven. I mean, she's the easiest of the top 5 to play. She also, you know, has other perks. I think most of it is just like, wow, she's really popular. She wins a lot in the pro scene. She scales really well. She's relatively easy to play at like a functional level at least. Now, obviously, at the highest level, dodging skill shots with her ult and, you know, all of that stuff takes skill. But I'm just talking like you just pick her up and just play her as an auto-filled person. She's one of your better options. So I think that's part of what drags her win rate down. It's just that she's so popular and she's played by people that don't play AD carry or don't play her. But she's still really strong. I mean, obviously, she's really overpowered in pro play. I think she has almost an 80% win rate right now. Maybe it was 70%. But, let's see, for patch 8.19 at Worlds, yeah, almost 70%. It's just insanely powerful. And part of it is she does hybrid damage. So a lot of times people will go Stormrazor, Ginsu's, and then Nashor's or Hurricane. So she has a lot of different build paths, but she can do a lot of AD or a lot of AP. So it depends on what your team needs. If your team has a whole bunch of AD, you know, you have an Irelia top lane and a Yasuo mid lane, then you can opt for an AP build. You know, you can go Ginsu's, Nashor's, Deathcap, and just do a ton of AP if you want to do that. Or if for some reason your team has a lot of AP, so you have like Rumble top, Evelynn jungle, and then like a Syndra middle, then you can go for a heavy AD build. You can go something like Stormrazor, Hurricane, and Ginsu's, or something like that. So she has a really versatile build path compared to a lot of other champs. And because she can go AP, her defensive item selection gives her, you know, extra... she has extra options, right? So she can go Banshee's Veil. She can go Zhonya's. These aren't designed to be used by AD carries, but she can use them because she can make really good use of those items. And she already does, because she has high AP ratios, she already does pretty substantial damage after your first 2 items. So with your 3rd item, you can afford to get a utility item if you really want to, and you'll still do a ton of damage. So she's great at dueling. She's pretty good off of 1 item. Not as good as Lucian, I don't think, or Jhin, or like Draven, some of these other top people. She doesn't use Stormrazor as well as they do. But definitely starting at 2 items, she really starts ramping up, going hard. And if she gets ahead, you know, she can be very, very strong. So just all around great champion right now. The one thing in solo queue is you can get bullied out early, particularly if your support doesn't really give you much support in the laning phase. If they're just sitting there watching you, you can definitely get bullied out by Jhin, Misfortune, Draven, a lot of the a lot of the popular picks coming forward. If you look at her damage, she does about half magic damage and half physical, so it's just really hard to itemize against that. But yeah, so she can get bullied early, but if you survive, she can take over the game later on. She's very good at smashing tanks, so she's just like, she just takes over what other champions historically have done. So because she exists, things like Vayne and Kog'Maw are just really bad right now because she's just a better version of those. But then she also has like pretty good dueling power if she gets ahead early on, and she has magic damage, so she's just too strong. They are nerfing her on the next patch. I think they're nerfing... trying to remember what they said they're going to nerf. I don't think they're very specific, but it sounded like something with her passive, maybe. Again, I'm not sure, but she's definitely in the crosshairs for patch 821. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, still going to be super strong. Fleet Footwork's what I recommend. You can do press the attack, particularly if they have a couple of big tanks like a Mundo or an Urgot or something like that. I know Urgot's not classified as a tank. I think he's a bruiser, but let's be real. He gets like 4,000 health and a repeatable shield with everything else, so he's a tank. If you need to chew through tanks, you can do press the attack, but Fleet Footwork does give you more sustain to help you through those tough lanes, and then it's just a standard absolute focus, Gathering Storm, Coup de Grace, Triumph, all the usual suspects there. So very strong champion, not as strong early on, but still nevertheless good. She's great into Ezreal, and Ezreal's going to be very popular right now because he's going to give you a free laning phase, and you're going to outscale him probably, so that's something to keep in mind. Now, Ezreal, we already talked about what's changing on this patch with him, so he's going to get a higher ratio, an AD ratio on his W, which is going to be really nice for extra burst damage. We might see like an AP Ezreal type of build mid lane again because of how fast he can shred towers. But keep in mind, the W has an AD ratio too, so that can also shred towers really quickly. I mean, it's possible we could see something like a Gunblade on him again, but I think that, I mean, maybe with the burst, like, depending on how much extra burst this is, which it could be significant, you might see Gunblade again. I think Ezreal's one of those champions where he can build a lot of different stuff. He's pretty versatile. So I still think it's definitely going to be tier, absolutely. I like Iceborne Gauntlet with him because, well, I said Trinity here, but I'm going to say Iceborne. And I'm coming to like Iceborne more and more because it adds extra utility for your team. It also comes online a lot faster, so it gives you a slightly faster power spike. And it's very good against assassins. So with champions like Kha'Zix, like Lucian still being very popular, being able to get that extra armor is very nice. And you get it 1,000 gold faster than Trinity Force. And you don't really use the attack speed off of Trinity Force that much. Like, you kind of do, but a lot of times you're just hitting Qs, And the Qs do more damage off Trinity Force for sure. But Trinity is nice, but I just like Iceborne a bit better. Iceborne also helps you wave clear better because it does AoE damage to the wave and slows it down so it doesn't hit your tower as fast. It also slows down, like, Trinity Force, if you hit it, it does speed you up, which is nice, which allows you to kite, but that's not quite the same as slowing, the enemy down. Especially because when you slow them down, it makes it easier to hit subsequent Qs. So if you hit them with one Q, they're slowed, then you should be able to chain that together and hit them continuously with Qs as they try to run away. So it makes it very difficult for them to escape you. Also, it helps your team. So if your mid lane Zoe's running from somebody and you can just tag the enemy with a couple of Qs, sometimes that's enough to save your teammate to help them get away. So I really do like the Iceborne. It might be marginally less damage, but I think that overall it's pretty handy on Ezreal. Don't forget the mana converts over to AD at a pretty decent ratio if you do Manamune. And if you do Archangels, it's at an even better ratio because then you're going to get double benefit from having a lot of mana. And I still do like the Archangels build. If it's going to go like 25, 30-minute game, which a lot of games do these days, honestly. If you just start up that second tier around 20 minutes, you can get it done by like 30 minutes. But if the game's going faster, you can skip it and just do Blade the Ruined King. So I would definitely do, I think he's still going to do Manamune, for sure. And then I think he's going to do some kind of Sheen item. So I think Iceborne. And then after that, you know, I could see him potentially looking towards something like a Gunblade. Especially if people are going like mid lane Ezreal. I guess you could go Gunblade, you could go Manamune and then Gunblade. If you really want to like have that burst available right away. So then you would be skipping your Sheen item, though, and that's such a huge power spike for him. I guess you could just get Sheen and then go for Manamune and just say whatever, and don't even finish the rest of the Iceborne item. It doesn't have CDR on it, though, which is really important for Ezreal. It has minimal interactions from long range. It does have an extra AP and AD ratio, so if you look at... Hextech Gunblade here. It is pretty efficient, right? It's an expensive item. It's like 3,400 gold, but it is 121% efficient without its actives. Now, it is going to heal for 15% of all damage dealt, including physical, magic, and true damage. I'm not sure how this interacts with your Q if you have Iceborne Gauntlet. That would be interesting to see. So if you use a Q, that should only be single target, but it has that on-hit effect of Iceborne Gauntlet, which spreads the Q to other targets. So I think that would still count as single target. So if you like Q'd a wave that has 5 minions in it, I think you would get single target healing off of that. So that would be a lot of healing. Historically, that's how it has worked with champions like Old LeBlanc, with her spreading. Like, her Q was technically only single target, but if it was like empowered or if the champion had a mark on it, then it would spread to all the others and get a bonus. This also worked with Xayah. When Xayah was initially released, was her Q, those little missiles for some reason were coded as single target, and she would heal up like half of her health off of a wave. So I'm not sure if you get Iceborne Gauntlet with Ezreal and then get Gunblade, how that would interact. That might give you the massive amount of healing, but I don't think it's something you would rush, because you have to have a mana item on him for sure. You have to have a tier item. And then after that, we'll see. So that's kind of the one thing about him, is it's like Gunblade would be really nice on him, but typically this is something you want to rush and try to snowball off of. And I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do that efficiently. Now, if you do land your Q and you know, dash forward with a Sheen, you get your Sheen proc, or if you do land your W rather, you dash forward, you get your Sheen proc, you proc the W, and then you use this, the lightning bolt, to slow them down. Like, that's quite a bit of burst damage. And the thing is, this is flat damage. That's why you want it early on in the game. But I'm not sure. I've always been intrigued by this option on Ezreal. I'm just not sure if it's going to happen. Maybe for mid lane Ezreal. Maybe you could just go tier straight into Gunblade, where you're tier stacking and just not even mess with Manamune. Maybe you could go like tier Gunblade Sheen and then finish your Manamune just so you get this early. I mean, it does come with Bilgewater, which also gives you some really nice sustain in the laning phase to help you out, and does give you a little bit of extra burst. The Revolver also gives you some burst. Not sure. It'll be interesting to try out. So he will do more burst damage. He might incorporate Gunblade. I don't see him doing other stuff, really. I mean, in theory, you could do something like a Death Cap if you want to at some point, but I still think that just going for the standard, you know, you end up with Iceborne, or Trinity, Manamune, Blade the Ruined King, and then potentially Hextech Gunblade or Archangels. So I'm not sure if this will get used, but if any item like comes out of the woodwork to get played on Ezreal, it could be this. It's kind of like new wacky item that plays well with kind of a more AP type of build. Then maybe this works. We'll see. But I expect Ezreal to be really good right now, regardless of his build. He's already good. The problem is you just have to be good on him. That's the issue. So you have to hit a lot of Qs. You have to never get hit with anything. And I think that right now, his win rate, actually, even though this is a great buff to him, I think the W, I think his win rate will remain about the same. It might go up a little bit, but that's because there's going to be a lot of new people that don't play Ezreal that are just wanting to get on board and get his skins. You know, he's got a new slick look. He looks like he's a lot of fun. People historically have loved to play Ezreal, but most people were very bad on Ezreal, so that's the issue. He's kind of like Vayne 2.0, right? People love to play him. So I expect this pick rate to go up into the 20s, probably maybe even 25%, as people try him out. And his win rate might go closer to 50%. We'll see. But he'll be good in the right hands. He'll be good in the right hands. You know, he is going to take towers fast. That's a big thing because he has really good poke. And so he can poke people off of towers, and then just when they have to back, you know, he can just drop those Ws, take towers really quickly. I mean, he might be super overpowered. He just might be. I mean, we'll see. I still think that the skill ceiling is going to be so high that most people will still be bad on him. Because he does get bullied out hard in the laning phase. You know, by Draven, by Jhin, Misfortune, Lucian. All these people just bust him up until he gets 1 or 2 items most of the time. And so that's a thing. That's a real thing in this meta. But if you get there, you know, if you get to like 2 items, he is very good at surviving. You can play really far off the wave and last hit very well. You do have Kleptomancy, so if you fall a little bit behind in CS, you can catch up in gold with those bags of gold. You know, you have the biscuits to help you get through the laning phase a little bit. You know, it is possible that you can make it. And if you go Iceborne Gauntlet, then Transcendence plus Ionian Boots, you'll get your 40% CDR. Then you don't even have to go Archangels. You can just go Blade of the Ruined King into, or Gunblade. I still think that Gunblade, if you're going to get it, you want to get it early just because it has such high flat damage. But maybe you could still get it 3rd item. Maybe it'd still be okay 3rd. I don't know. So we'll see how it goes. He does have the option, you know, as I mentioned before, he can get Ninja Tabby also and Iceborne. This makes him very resilient to things like Kha'Zix, Rengar, stuff like that. I mean, they'll still be able to kill him, but it's definitely going to take more power than it would for your average AD carry, right? So it's still going to take them maybe 1 more item to one-shot him than, you know, an average AD carry. So, will he be strong? Yes. Is he going to be, like, absolute #1 tier? Probably not for your average user, but maybe in Challenger, in Pro Play, he can be very good. I still think that Kaisa on this patch is still going to be #1 at the top end, but Ezreal is going to be a lot better. So keep your eye on Ezreal. He's going to be strong. I just put him in, like I said, at #5. I could see him, you know, I could see him being as high as maybe maybe #2 or 3. I could see slotting him in ahead of Draven, because Draven's kind of hard to play too, which is the same argument with Ezreal. I could see him as high as #3 if you want to put him there. I just have Draven up a little bit higher just because he does more early, and it still is kind of an early game meta, but I can see Ezreal being very, very strong here. Okay, Twitch. Still going to be very strong. It pains me to take him out of tier 1. I always feel dirty doing it because he's so good if you can just make it through the laning phase. So he's kind of like Ezreal in a slightly different way. If he just gets that Blade of the Ruined King, he's so good at sneaking around. He's invisible. He has awesome steroids. He's very good at sneaking up and one-on-oneing people. He's very good at, you know, destroying entire teams and team fights. He's very versatile. It's just he's really, really weak in the laning phase. But if you can get through that, in solo queue especially, the lower the elo goes, the better Twitch is going to be. Because people are not going to respect his invisibility. He's just going to get to run up and kill people constantly. And that's going to create problems. Even at higher elos, you know, even right here in like Challenger level elo, he's still very strong. So I think that he's great. Oh, this guy's trying out Black Cleaver. I don't know about that. Guess it's okay. I think you definitely want to do Blade of the Ruined King and then Hurricane first. And then maybe you could try Cleaver after that. I don't know. I still feel like Infinity Edge is probably your way to go. But I guess it's really just this one dude that's trying it out. But yeah, I think he's great. I think he's still going to be very strong. The only reason that I nudged him down here, I'm just kind of giving a nod to Ezreal, showing a little respect for the buff. We'll see how it plays out. Twitch is definitely much easier to play than Ezreal. So we'll see. I think Twitch is still very strong. He's like an honorary tier 1. I always have my tiers just so it has really easy sort of relatability as top 5, top 10, top 15. Just so it's real simple. It means the same thing every single tier list regardless. So I do think that like Twitch and Misfortune are up there in kind of that tier 1 territory, but they're just a little bit weaker than the other 5, I think. But they could be a little bit interchangeable depending on how good you are and like what your team comps are and things like that. But I just like to do that just for easy readability, just so you can compare it one patch to the next. It's always 5, 10, 15. I know there are some tier lists where they're like, okay, they might only have 1 or 2 in the top tier, and then the next patch they'll have like 10, and then it's like, okay, well, what does the top tier mean? Is it the top 2 or is it the top 10? You know, so that's just how I like to break it up. Okay, Misfortune is another one. Still going to be very strong. Still going to have a high win rate. I think she'll still probably have like 52% win rate, 53%. One of the main reasons is she's one of the best autofill AD carries. So if you get filled, if you don't play AD carry, Misfortune's your girl. She has very good early game harassment with her Q. It's a skill shot of sorts, but all you have to do is just, you know, tap the ranged minions, get them at like half health, and then the enemy AD carry can't step up to the minion wave if you can do that. Because if they ever do, you can just Q, kill that minion, bounce it off, and boom, there's like half their health gone. So I think she's a very strong bully. She has really long range, effective range, because she can bounce her Q off of the minions. During the laning phase, she is very good with a lot of the other popular all-in engaged champions. You know, particularly Leona, because if Leona goes in with her E and you drop your Make It Rain on top of them, it's going to proc her Sunlight procs immediately as soon as she uses them, so there's no wasted Sunlight procs. So she E's in, you press E immediately on top of them, and then she's going to do her combo. She's going to reset auto to get her last hit, or to get her stun in there, and then her W is going to proc, and they're probably going to be dead, especially if you just go over and then use your Q to reset the auto and attack. That's like the one mechanic you have to do with Misfortune a lot, is you auto attack and then you press Q after you auto attack, so you get those 2 attacks, because it is like an attack reset. So you want to make sure you're doing that. But yeah, very strong. The E also makes it really helpful if you have an experienced support to hit their skill shots. So if Thresh is positioning like he wants to get a hook on somebody, just drop your E on top of them. It's going to slow them down a ton, and it should make it a lot easier for Thresh or Pyke to hit their hooks. Or for Alistar to catch up to them. You know, this was really popular back in Worlds, I think of Season 6, where you had Misfortune support. It was Misfortune support with Ashe. So you would drop the Make It Rain on top of them as the support, and then Ashe would hit her arrow, and that's how, you know, a lot of the fights started. So I don't think she's great as a support right now. They've kind of nerfed her mana costs and things like that. She was pretty good earlier in the season as support, but I still think she's pretty good as AD carry because of her interaction with Dark Harvest. I still think you go Dustblade. Like, if you get Dustblade and Dark Harvest, it just like, and you like Q and it kills a minion and bounces off of it, it just straight one-shots people in the mid-game. It's really, really powerful. So they are nerfing Dark Harvest a little bit, but I think it'll still be really good on her. So I nudged her down a little bit. You know, statistically, she probably could still be tier 1. But like I said, I just wanted to give Ezreal, you know, his time in the sun here, because he's getting reworked. I think he has the potential to be super strong, so we'll see how that pans out. And then just Kaisa is kind of a respect bump here. I'm actually, you know, well, I'll leave it. I'll leave it, just because she is so strong if it makes it to later in the game. I was going to move Ezreal ahead of Kaisa, but Kaisa is easier to play, so we'll just run it like this. But Misfortune definitely could be up there. So I still think you're going to run Dark Harvest on her, Taste of Blood, Ghost Poro, Ultimate Hunter, so you get more ultimates, and then Berserker, Dustblade, Ghostblade, Cleaver, just all of the armor shred, and then if you get another item after that, like Mortal Reminder. And she's very good with those all-in hard engaged champs too. You know, the Leonas, the Alistars, the Threshes. Anyone that can just hold somebody still, which is like every popular support right now, you just press R and they're dead. You know, kill one person, kill 5 people in a team fight, doesn't matter. If they can't move, then they're going to die. So she's really, really strong. Now, she is susceptible herself to getting hooked by Thresh or, you know, Pyke or whatever. She does get extra movement speed off of her passive, so that does help out some off her strut, but she still is susceptible to assassins, or to like Kha'Zix or Rengar or, you know, Fizz or whatever it is, you know, that the enemy has. They're always going to have something like that on their team. So she is susceptible to that kind of stuff, but overall, I think she's still going to be pretty good. So she could definitely be up in tier 1. But now, this is where we're starting to drop off. So, like, Twitch and Misfortune definitely could be in tier 1. It's just kind of like, That's just how I made the distinctions for the reasons I stated there. But Jinx is definitely a step down, I think, from these up here. She's still pretty good. She's like an intermediary step. So she's not quite a step all the way down, but she's like a little half step down. So what Jinx's problem is she does push early, but she is very susceptible to all-in engages. Very susceptible. And her harassment early on is not as good as other champions that are also susceptible to all-ins. So champions like Jhin, champions like Misfortune, they have a completely beast mode early game, like super damage early on, right? Jinx doesn't have that. She has some damage early on with her rockets. So she does have wave clear, she does have extra range, she does have her chompers, which is great sort of CC chain. You know, if Thresh hooks somebody and you chompers them and, you know, hold them still, then that's pretty good. And she does have a really nice ult. So if Leona, you know, engages, you hit them a couple of times, they flash out, you hit them with your ultimate, you can get some kills. So she is very strong right now. It's just, I feel like she's a bit more vulnerable. And she doesn't have the early game power to justify that kind of vulnerability, is how I feel. So she is still good. She does still have a good win rate. She's a cool champion. She's fun. You know, she's got about a 52% win rate. So it's all good. But I think that's definitely something to pay attention to. And as far as scaling goes, you know, I would probably, if you just want to go for the play it for late, I'd rather have Twitch or Xayah probably for someone who's going to be like okay in the laning phase. She is better than both of those are, I think, in the laning phase. But I think those two are better off of single item power spike. She's going to get Stormrazor, which is pretty good. But like Twitch with Blazer and King and Xayah with either Gensu's or Stormrazor might be a bit stronger. So we'll see. I mean, Jinx does scale really well. She does have very good wave clear. She does have chompers that can chain CC together. She does have an execute ability with her ult. So she's strong. You know, she's still, I guess she's still in the conversation with these other ones. I just think that her vulnerability coupled with a weaker early game and a little bit less utility than something like Twitch. I mean, that invisibility is so powerful. Or like Xayah can also go invisible and she can like get a huge shield and, you know, dash around with her ultimate. Jinx is just a slight step lower, I think. But she's still very strong. Okay, Varus is decidedly a step down. So if you're really looking to climb in solo queue, I think that these 8 are really where you should be right now. There are other choices, and we're going to talk about them. But just to be clear, if you're not doing something out of this top 8, and there's any way you could do something out of the top 8, I would do something out of the top 8. But we will continue. Okay, Varus, still going to be pretty strong, right? He's got some utility. He has his ult, which is really nice. It not only locks down one person, but it can spread and lock down multiple people, so that's helpful. He does get Blazer and King early, so that's helpful. And then he has a nice second spike, too, with Gensu, so he's a Blade and Gensu's user, which is pretty good. Problem is, he just doesn't have a lot of early game damage. He has some harass. He does have slightly higher range, which is good. He does have a built-in Grievous Wounds with his E, so you don't have to get Executioner's Calling as early as you might have to do it on other champs in some situations. That's helpful. But he just doesn't have the raw power early on. Later on, he does. But early on, ever since they nerfed his W, he just doesn't quite have the same level of punch as he has in the past. And I think that Kai'Sa's just kind of crowding him out. So he does provide some CC and some utility, which is good. But I think other champs are just kind of crowding him out right now. He's not even doing as well at the top level, I don't think. He's doing okay, actually. He's like, I think it looks like about 50%. So he's okay. That's just how I would think of him. He's okay. He's serviceable. He's respectable. I just don't think he's as strong as these other ones in a vacuum. Xayah could potentially be a bit higher. Because Rakan is so strong right now, I think that Rakan's probably, you know, the best overall support. If he's not the best overall support, he's certainly in the top 5. You know, I think top 3. The only things I would say you could maybe say would be higher than him right now would be something like Thresh or Pyke. Yeah, she's about 50% there, like 50-50. I think she's also about 50% in solo queue. 48%. Not amazing. The problem is, like, the runes and the items just aren't fantastic on her right now. You know, because she wants to get, like, a lot of critical strike in her kit because her feather, like, her Eid Blade Caller scales off of crit. So it doesn't gain any benefit from Stormrazor. You have to get Stormrazor because everybody gets Stormrazor, and you need a single item power spike. I've proposed maybe getting Blade of the Ruined King on her, but it's not that amazing because like her feathers, as they pass through, they don't apply Blade to everybody. Because it's only on autos. Those don't apply on hit to everything that they go through, unlike Twitch, which specifically says it applies to on hit. So it is kind of awkward. It's a little awkward because for everyone else that just wants those crits like Jhin or like Draven, it's functionally the same. Okay, you get 100% crit, great. But she actually, her ability scales off of crit. There aren't, I can't even think of another support champion that scales off, or AD carry champion that scales off a crit like that, where they have actual abilities that scale off of your percentage crit. I'm sure there are some. Maybe Jhin probably has some in there, but it's just awkward because you have to go Stormrazor, which doesn't help your E as much as it should, and then you go Rapid Fire Cannon, which is okay, but she doesn't have a really strong single hit. You know, you want to be stacking up the feathers on the ground. That's where all your damage is from. So, you know, the Stormrazor Gunblade really heavily favors champs that have a very strong first hit, right? So champions like Jhin, champions like Draven, who have those strong first hits. Or it needs to be a champion that uses Blade of the Ruined King, like Lucian, like Varus, Xayah, Vayne, or that you just have some kind of funky interactions and huge AP ratios for some reason, like Xayah. Right, so she's just kind of in this weird item limbo where the items just really aren't that good on her right now. She does have a great kit. Similarly, runes aren't really that great. She's not really a good abuser of certain runes. Like, she can do fleet, she can do lethal tempo, but it's not like nothing just pops out like, wow, you know, that's really good on her. Right, like, you know, Lucian with Press the Attack, or Jhin with Hail of Blades, or Misfortune with Dark Harvest. You know, all of these champs, you know, a lot of them just have this, or like Ezreal with Kleptomancy, where it's just like, wow, that's really good with that champion. That's an awesome, like, fit for their kit, you know? She just doesn't have that. So, it's just awkward. Like, she has a great kit, she's great with Recon, she scales pretty well into the game, but just her items and runes are just weird and just don't work out very well right now. So, I think that's why she's down in the gutter a little bit, even though Recon is very, very strong with her. So I wouldn't play her unless you have Recon probably on your team, but if you do, it's worth considering. Okay, finally Tier 3, and then we'll go ahead and finish this up. Tristana is getting a bit more traction lately. She is very safe. You know, she can jump away. She has her ultimate. She's very good at snowballing. So if you're ahead, you know, she's really good with these all-in supports. So if you... if, like, your Leona goes in and attaches to somebody, if you're sufficiently ahead to where you're going to win the fight, you can rocket jump right on top of their face, throw your bomb out, land, you know, your 3 hits or whatever to make it explode. I think it's 4 hits to make it explode, and then rocket jump again to clean them up. Or you can rocket jump away if you've already killed them. But it's really, really difficult to get away from her and to not die if she's very far ahead in the laning phase, right? So if they have a hard engaged support, they have that Thresh, that Pike, Recon, Alistar, Leona, pretty much all of the top 5 supports. If they kill you once, it's gonna be a tough day, because as soon as they engage, you know, she can jump in there, and you know, if your flash is down, if they have more damage than you, you're gonna die, and it does pretty good damage early on too. This is one way I found to kind of circumvent like the weirdness of that page, which people have told me that it loads up on their browsers. It's just not like loading up properly on mine, but whatever, we can get around it this way. So yeah, I mean, they did buff the damage on her explosive shot too. So I mean, if you look at this, you know, you're probably, I think you max, I can't remember what you max on her. It used to be rocket jump. So that you'd have a lower cooldown on it. But the cooldown gets reset like 2 different ways now, so I'd have to look it up. I mean, let me see here. I don't know if it's her Q or her E. It might depend on how you want to scale. Okay, it's her E. Alright, so that does help you out with towers, and that helps you out with dueling. That makes sense. I like that. And your W has so many resets now that that's fine. And then Q is... I figured Q would probably be secondary. It has a pretty high base. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, that's a lot of damage. That's 220 damage plus 110% of your bonus, or 242% of your bonus AD later on. But even early on, it's 110% of your bonus AD, even at just level 1. So that's a lot of extra damage, in addition to your normal auto attacks, and your W does 85 base damage and slows them down early on. And you can get all of this extra attack speed. So she's very good. Don't forget, you're going to get to jump twice. So that's really 170 damage if you get this off. So you jump in, it's 85, you hit them 4 times. It's going to do an extra this amount of damage, which is a huge amount, and then you get to jump on them again. So it's very, very snowbally. So she can be super aggressive if you get ahead. Now, she doesn't have that one hit. You know, she doesn't have the Jhin or, you know, the Draven that just, or the Misfortune that just light them up like eye-popping damage off of one hit early on. That's the main thing. And she has short attack range. I think she only starts off, yeah, with 525 attack range. That's a problem, too. But Lucian has short attack range. I think Lucian only has 500. Xayah has 525. So it's possible in this meta to get away with a short attack range. So she could be okay. I mean, she scales really hard. 110% attack speed is very nice. She doesn't have any extra AD ratios in her kit. Now, that's definitely a thing to consider. Is, you know, you've got champions like Twitch, like Xayah, you know, Draven. All these champions are going to have really high AD ratios on some of their abilities. She doesn't have any AD ratios hardly. She has a little bit here. Okay, her bomb, this is, I mean, 242% is quite a bit for an AD ratio. But, like, her ult doesn't have an AD ratio. Her W doesn't have an AD ratio. So, and nothing gives her extra AD, is what I'm trying to say also. So, she's okay. She's good. She can play really safe. Not only can you jump away, but if you've ever seen this before, it just, like, it makes you invulnerable. Or not invulnerable. You still take damage, but unstoppable is the word. So even if Blitz lands that hook on you, if you're in the motion of rocket jumping, if you get used to that, you will jump out of it. Or if Thresh hooks you, you will jump out of it. Right? They can hit you while you're in midair, but they can't hit you while you are, like, in the motion of jumping. It's very bizarre. It looks very buggy. It's extremely frustrating to play against. But if you get good with Tristana, you can jump out of almost anything, almost any CC. Now, you will be stunned when you finish the duration, but during the takeoff, you won't be stunned. So, now Thresh can pull you out of the air if you're in midair and he flays you. So you want to be aware of that, but that's like really top-end level Thresh play. That's not going to happen under Diamond most of the time. But, like, if Thresh hooks you, for example, you need to wait until he flays you. Most Threshes will just instinctually just flay you immediately once they go in after the hook. So wait on him to flay you and then jump out. Or if you're going to jump out, jump at a really weird angle, like off to the side diagonally or something, to try to, you know, fake out his flay. Okay. But anyways, I think she can be really strong right now, potentially. I just think she gets overshadowed by some of the top picks. You know, her win rate reflects that. She's at a pretty low win rate. And is she like 48% or something? 49%. But she does have some potential. She does take towers very quickly. She is pretty safe. So she's okay. She's very good if you snowball with her. But you got to get that first couple of kills to get going first. But she can definitely run away with the game because of her jumps and those resets, if you have an aggressive support and if you get ahead. Okay. Caitlyn is another one that's kind of rising a little bit in popularity. She's coming back. This champion's so toxic when she's in the meta. But, you know, in theory, Stormrazor, Rapid Fire Cannon, excellent job, you know, with Caitlyn. So, the problem is, she still has that mid-game lull. So, you know, once you complete your Stormrazor, she's pretty strong. Once you get Rapid Fire, it's okay, but then after that, you kind of start falling off a little bit. If you're really good on Caitlyn, you can definitely make her work. You know, the traps are really good zoning tools. It's really good to follow up with all-in, you know, supports. So if Alistar combos on somebody and you drop a trap immediately and he lands on it, it's great. Caitlyn is one of the hardest AD carries to play, though. And a lot of people don't realize that because you have to combo with her. She is balanced around professional level play Caitlyn because she just ruled the meta for like almost a year. And she has been very popular historically because she has very long range, which really high-level players, you know, make good use of that, obviously. So if someone lands on a trap, what you need to do, especially if you have open field, if you don't have minions in the way, you auto attack and then you net backwards. While you're netting backwards, you can press your Q. While you're in the motion of netting backwards, you press your Q and then you auto attack again. Then you're going to get 2 headshots in there, and you're going to get your Q hit, and that's almost going to one-shot people if you do that. But I see so many Caitlyn, someone will step on a trap right in front of them, all they'll do is headshot. That's it. They won't even throw a Q, right? At a bare minimum, if they step on your trap, you should throw a Q at them and then headshot, right? But the best Caitlyns will headshot, net, Q, headshot for maximum damage. So the changes to Infinity Edge definitely hurt her a lot. It's just really awkward, you know, because she is someone who did scale. She might actually, her headshot might scale with crit. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure that it can crit though. But either way, the itemization changes and the rune changes have definitely hurt her. She can still use Fleet. That's the only thing you should use on Caitlyn, by the way. I'm pretty sure, unless there's a new build. I see some people doing like Lethal Tempo or it's like Hail of Blades, all kinds of garbage on her. It's got to be Fleet, right? Yeah, it's got to be Fleet. There's no other option. And it's not even really that great on her, honestly. It's just, that's what you have to take, right? It helps you sustain, gives you a little bit of extra movement speed. It's okay. And it's just always going to be Storm Razor, Rapid Fire, Infinity Edge. So she's okay. If you're really good at taking towers quickly, you know, she's good at that. The problem is other champions are also good at that now. So champions like new Ezreal, going to be very good at taking towers. Champions like Tristana, very good at taking towers. So other people are taking her job. They don't have the same kind of range she does early on, but she's just really hard to play properly. And a lot of that is just around the trap play. Good trap usage. So I think that she has the potential to come back in. I just think that she needs a little bit of help, just a little nudge. Although I don't want that nudge. I don't like it when Caitlyn's in the meta because she's very oppressive. When she's good, everyone else is bad a lot of the time. She just because of her range, her kit, it's just really hard to deal with her. So I don't really want her back in the meta, but if she's going to come back in, she's creeping in, then she needs a little bit of help, I think. Like just if her traps do a little bit more damage or maybe she gets a bit more wave clear off her Q again, then she could be pretty good, but anyway, she's okay right now. Ashe is another one. Ashe is okay. I mean, she's got nice range. She's got nice initiation. She is very vulnerable to hard engages. You know, she has very limited escapes. Her damage output is fairly low compared to some of these other champs. You know, she can still throw down some damage for sure, but the fact that her crit turns into a critical freeze, it's just awkward. You know, you have to get Blather and King on her, and you're already slowing people. So the blade slow doesn't do that much. It does speed you up, which is nice. And Hurricane is nice to apply your frost bolts or whatever. But most people just aren't going to make really good use of her range in the laning phase to harass properly. They're not going to utilize Hawkshot properly to track the jungler like you do in pro play. You know, they may not even hit all their W's for proper harassment in the laning phase. So she can be very good, particularly if you have poke you know, if you're running a poke comp. So if you have like a Xayah or something, she's very good with Xayah. But yeah, she just doesn't have like the burst damage to follow up on a lot of the hard engaged champs. So she's going to be very vulnerable to Thresh, Pyke, Rakan, a lot of these champs. She's going to be vulnerable to them, and she's not going to play very well with them because once she's level 6, she can. But pre-level 6, she's not going to have any follow-up CC or burst damage. So I don't know. She's okay. I would play something that just has a lot more punch in the early game or scales a lot harder into the late game. But she's still serviceable. You can still win with her. Okay, Vayne I have down here. She has like 50, almost 51% win rate right now. She is pretty popular. You know, the Blather and King plus Ginsu's build is cute. She did get a buff to her Q, so she can roll around more early on. She is good at breaking up tanks. The problem is people aren't playing tanks in solo queue, and you're going to get completely busted up in lane. The problem with Vayne is she has no abilities that do significant damage. It's all auto attack based. So it's just like, do you land your 3 shots? So all Jhin has to do is just walk up with his 4th shot and auto you, and that's like, you know, half your health gone after he gets a BF sword. When you're going to be coming back, you know, with probably just a Vamp Scepter because you're going to be behind. You might have a Bilgewater, but, you know, you're going to auto-attack him back maybe once, or twice, and, you know, do, you know, maybe 15% of his health, maybe 20%. That's not a good way to go about trading, right? He has to hit you once, and it's going to do just as much damage a lot of times as you hitting him 2 or sometimes even 3 times early on, just because his itemization is so much stronger. Same thing with Misfortune, same thing with Draven, same thing with Lucian. You know, you're going to walk up and try to auto-attack Lucian and trade with him, and he's going to get 3 hits on you and press the attack, and he's going to have the same items as you do, the same life-stealing, and he's going to just beat you. He's going to beat you up most of the time. So, she is good. Like, once she gets Blade plus Gensu, she just mows through people, potentially, if you can stay safe enough to land all those autos. And if you have enough time to land those autos, right? So, if Rengar jumps in your face, you know, are you going to be able to deal with that? A really good Vayne, yeah, maybe. Maybe you can knock him back with your E while he's in midair. Or, you know, something crazy like that. But for a lot of the normal Vaynes, it's a problem. So, she really requires 2 items to get going. They're both expensive. The Blade of the Ruined King plus Gensu's are both over 3,000. And there just aren't a lot of tanks. So she's like, I'm not even going to say she's okay. I think she's actively not that great right now. But if you make it to 2 items, you know, you can survive. Like, but you're going to be down a lot of CS. You don't have mechanics to get you back into the game as well. You know, like Ezreal, at least he has his range. He can farm from a distance. He's got Klepto procs to help get him back in the game. You know, Twitch has his invisibility, so he can run around and get a couple of free kills, you know, in the mid-game. You know, he has a lot of range and team fight, so at least he can team fight well even if he's behind like half an item. You know, he does so much damage from range and AoE damage to everybody. You know, he has, like, stuff that can help get him back into the game. Vayne doesn't really have that. They're going to see you. You're going to have to outduel somebody. She's pretty bad in team fights, so you're going to have to fight 1v1 a lot of times. And if you're behind in items, that's just really hard to do. So, she's all right. I just think she's not quite as good as some people think she is right now. But, I mean, she's fun. I understand the allure of wanting to play her. She's okay. But I don't think she's that amazing right now. Now, Kalista is kind of my last person that I snuck in here. I moved down Sivir and moved up Kalista. I think that Kalista is on the verge of being okay again. Right now, she is someone that is heavily watched by pros. She is heavily balanced for pro play, so that means that most people in solo queue are going to be bad with her. But this type of meta is the type of thing that Kalista likes. Right? She likes these hard engaged tanks, because that works so well with her ultimate. Do I have Kalista still up here? Yeah. Ah, damn it. Of course. Okay, let me put in Kalista abilities here. And then I'll be the last person I talk about. Significantly. So they did... I really don't like it, but they did turn this to 150 seconds early on. And it doesn't do any damage. That's kind of weird, but it's a thing. But it is okay, thanks, dear. It is a 1.5 second knockup, so that's very good. You know, if you throw a Thresh in the middle of the enemy team, or you throw a Pike in the middle of the enemy team, or whatever, you're going to be able to chain CC and kill them, almost certainly. So that is really nice. She does have initiation like that. Obviously, Alistar and Rakan are extremely good with her. So that is strong. That's really good. And then, you know, she's pretty good at shredding down tanks. You know, when she gets her Blade of the Ruined King plus Gensu's, which is what people are building on her now, each extra, like, double hit of Gensu's does add an extra spear. So that gets spears in there really quickly. And she's pretty good at that. Like I said earlier, there aren't a lot of tanks out there. But I would prefer her most of the time, like, a good... I don't know. It's tough to say. I feel like she's a lot more relevant early on than Vayne is. So, yes, you do have to stick your spears in people, but you can kite really well and chase people down with those spears. And I feel like it's just a lot easier for her to get kills. Like, you know, levels 1 to 6, she can be very oppressive. She's kind of like Tristana, whereas if you get ahead, it's really hard to not die to her. Because she's going to run you down, she's going to keep sticking you, and eventually you're just going to die. She is hard to play because you have to constantly, like, move and readjust. You know, you have to be really good at what people call orb walking, which is where your attack moving, you know, to keep landing those spears on people. But it does add up. Like, she has decent burst with her Q, like, not huge, but the fact that it sticks spears in people So it does do some damage. It does stick them. It does do 100% of your AD. So pretty decent. Q. She takes a lot of practice, though. She's really hard to play because you have to understand when you need to pull out the spears or not. And it's really hard. You just have to visually know it. You just have to know the matchups. Because how her mechanic works, if you're not familiar with her, each additional spear does... So the first spear does whatever this is, 60 plus 60% AD. Each additional spear, whenever you rend them, so whenever you auto-attack, it sticks them with spears, and then you rend, and it pulls all of them out. So if they have 5 spears in them, the first one's going to do this much, and then you're going to have 4 of these. So that'd be an additional 80% of your AD early on, plus 150. So it can do quite a bit of damage. The issue with her is in a heavily burst-centric meta, right, when you have, like, Jhin, you know, Draven, a lot of these champs almost one-shotting people, you may not have time to stick those spears in there. But especially against some of these other, squishier type of, like, slower champions, so, like, against the Xayah or against Ezreal, Twitch, maybe Jinx, Vayne, you might have time to stick those spears in there. And it's going to be very good at killing their support and kiting out their support. So if they have like a Thresh running at you or an Alistar or Leona or something like that, you might be able to deal with them a little bit better. And maybe even kill them at some point. So she can be good. She does not have a good win rate right now. I'm not saying she's necessarily good for everybody right now. But I'm just saying, if you've been wanting to learn Kalista, if she looks like she's fun, I could sense just 1 or 2 changes. You know, if they nerf Stormrazor, they nerf Jhin a little bit more. You know, maybe they nerf a couple more of these, like, early damage runes, something like that, then, you know, or they buff Blade of the Ruined King a little bit, or, you know, she gets a rune, like, they buff Lethal Tempo a little bit, which is very good on her. Maybe Lethal Tempo starts working immediately instead of requiring a delay. Maybe it's something like that. You know, just a little nudge, and I think that she could definitely start taking off. Maybe if tanks start coming back in, maybe... so she's kind of like a maybe. She's a question mark. I think that she's definitely more viable than Sivir or Cog right now, which are like the other choices. So I think you could see her creeping up a little bit in the future. And if you do build her, like I said, historically it's been Blade of the Ruined King Hurricane, but I think more people are going Gensus. This gives you bigger single target burst damage, but you can do Hurricane, which is better for team fights and better for wave clear. So it's just kind of up to you. Hurricane does apply... her Ren stacks to everybody that gets hit with the Hurricane Bolts. So, unlike Silver Bolts, that's how that works. So, she usually goes Lethal Tempo, Overheal, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, and Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm. So, like I said, I don't think she's necessarily the greatest right now, but I think if you're really good with her, it's starting to become... The stars are starting to align, right? We're seeing the tank hard engage supports. She's great with that. We're starting to see some tanks show up in other lanes. Some of the other lane-dominant champions are getting nerfed right now. It was Misfortune this patch. Jin's probably next patch. So it's maybe, you know, maybe. Okay. Honorable mentions. Sivir, she's okay. I wouldn't play her right now. She's just too slow. Her mana costs are too high. She just doesn't do enough. She doesn't really have any CC. She doesn't do enough burst damage. I mean, she's okay. Kog'Maw. If they nerf Xayah significantly on the next patch, we'll have to see what happens. Maybe he comes back. Right now, she's just crowding him out. He does have nice range, and he is a good sort of magic damage dealer. But, you know, Gensus was nerfed a while ago, and he just doesn't have as much, like, synergy with different items that are good right now. Like, he can go Gensus, and then he can go, like... Blade of the Ruined King, and that's a pretty good, you know, couple item power spike there. And he used to go Wit's End. I don't think that's as good on him now as it used to be. So he's okay. He's just very, like, he's very vulnerable. He doesn't have a lot of movement. He doesn't have any defensive capabilities hardly. So I think Xayah just does his job better. But he's okay. And then just don't play this other stuff down here. This was really cool to think about in theory craft about for a couple of patches. Like around 8.11, 8.12, when everyone like really hated AD carry. They're like, that's destroying AD carry, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, there was a lot more viability back then. But anyways, that's fine. Not a big deal. You know, everybody's got their AD carries back. And to be fair, AD carry is in a fairly balanced position. It's not often you can say there are 8 like pretty top tier choices to pick from. That's rare. a lot of times the AD carry, because they're all competing to do the same thing, which is like range, sustained damage most of the time, it is really rare to have like the burst champions, the on-hit champions, and the crit champions all like viable at the same time. It almost never happens. So right now you can do some lethality champions. I guess it's just really misfortune. But you do have some of these burst champions like Jhin, Draven. You do have the sustained damage champions like Xayah and Twitch. And I guess those are on-hit champs too. There's a lot of variety right now. So I think the meta's in a pretty good place. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I really appreciate it. Don't forget to leave that like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Be sure to check out the channel for more content. I do have other tier lists, coaching sessions, individual champion guides. I stream most nights starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a great time. Come check it out. And I'll see you next time. Have a great day.